Have you ever wondered why your childhood felt different? Like you were carrying a weight others couldn't see? If you experienced DAS early in life, it wasn't random. It was a signal, a sacred sign that you were never ordinary. You were chosen, and no one ever told you. You were just a child, but something about you stood out, even if no one said it out loud. Maybe it was how deeply you felt things, how you could sense the energy in a room without anyone saying a word. Maybe it was how you sat in silence, watching the world, trying to figure out why it all felt so unfamiliar, even when you were at home. You weren't just growing up, you were awakening, and that awakening began with pain. The truth is, chosen ones rarely come from easy beginnings. They are often placed in environments that force them to grow fast, observe deeply, and endure silently. If you ever felt like the black sheep, the outcast, or the invisible one in your own home, it wasn't a curse. It was the first sign, because isolation is one of the earliest initiations of the chosen. You weren't ignored for nothing. You were hidden for protection. Many chosen ones grow up feeling emotionally neglected. It's not always dramatic or violent. Sometimes it's just the constant feeling of being overlooked, unheard, or misunderstood. It's that strange sensation that no matter what you say, no one truly sees you. And yet, deep down, you always saw everything. You noticed the little things. You picked up on people's true emotions. You felt their sadness, their lies, their tension, even when they smiled. That sensitivity was never weakness. It was your divine equipment. God gave you spiritual radar before you even knew how to use it. You weren't too emotional. You were tuned in. You weren't too quiet. You were absorbing truth. That inner world you lived in, the imagination, the dreams, the talking to God in your head while no one else noticed, those weren't childhood fantasies. That was the early sign of your calling. Do you remember spending time alone? Not because you wanted to, but because something about the crowd drained you. As a child, maybe you loved nature more than noise. Maybe you found comfort in books, journals, music, or just looking at the stars. And maybe the adults around you thought you were strange. But you weren't strange. You were being prepared. You were being called to walk a road that not everyone can understand. Chosen ones often experience spiritual attack early. Strange nightmares, constant fear, emotional heaviness they can't explain. This isn't random. The enemy always tries to distort the chosen in their earliest years before they discover who they truly are. If you grew up battling anxiety, depression, or feeling spiritually oppressed, even before you had the words to describe it, you weren't crazy. You were under fire because of what you carry. Let that sink in. The pain you went through wasn't punishment, it was preparation. It wasn't your fault, it was your formation. Your soul came to this world carrying light, and that light made you a target. But it also made you powerful beyond measure. When God chooses someone, He allows them to pass through fire so they can be refined, strengthened, and set apart. Think about the way you felt things others didn't, the way you'd cry over things no one else seemed to notice, the way your heart broke for people, animals, injustices. That was never a flaw. It was your gift. You were built to feel deeply because you were born to heal, to lead, to see beyond the surface. Even when people mocked you for being too much, the truth is, you were too real for a fake world. Maybe you were the peacemaker in your home, even as a child. Or maybe you were the one everyone leaned on, but no one checked on. Maybe you had to parent your parents. Maybe you grew up hearing things like, "Why can't you be more normal?" Or "You're too sensitive." But something in you refused to conform. Even when you tried to fit in, it just didn't work. And that's because you weren't meant to blend in. You were made to stand out. The problem is, no one told you. No one pulled you aside and said, "Hey, this heaviness you're carrying, it's sacred. This vision you have, it's divine. This loneliness you feel, it's a sign that you're marked." So you doubted yourself. You wondered if something was wrong with you. You questioned your worth. your identity, your place in the world. But I need you to hear this now. Nothing was wrong with you. Everything was right. You just didn't have the language to describe your light. Do you remember how you used to talk to yourself, not in a strange way, but in a comforting way? Like your soul was trying to guide you, even before you understood what intuition was. Do you remember how certain people drained you without saying a word? How your body would physically react when you walked into certain rooms? That wasn't anxiety. That was discernment. Spiritual intelligence. The gifts of the chosen often show up as burdens before they're understood. And that's why your childhood was hard. Not because you were weak, but because you were strong. Not because you were broken, but because you were being built. And maybe you're just now realizing that everything you went through, the rejection, the pain, the confusion, was a sacred invitation. A whisper from the divine saying, "You are not like the rest." And that's exactly why you're here. There's a reason you've always felt older than your age. A reason why you could sit in a room of adults and still feel like you understood something they didn't. You carried ancient wisdom in your spirit. You didn't need to be taught. Your soul remembered. And that memory came with a price. It made you different. It made you doubt yourself. It made you search for your tribe while feeling like you belonged nowhere. But you're not alone. You never were. All around the world, other chosen ones are waking up to the truth, just like you. They're realizing that their pain had purpose, that their suffering was sacred, that their childhood wasn't random. It was part of a divine design. And you, my friend, are part of that design too. And the most powerful thing about this realization, once you accept it, your entire story starts to make sense. The broken pieces align. The silence becomes a language. The pain becomes the prophecy. And that's when everything begins to shift. When you stop seeing your childhood as a curse and start recognizing it as the training ground of the chosen. The loneliness wasn't abandonment. It was isolation for elevation. You weren't being rejected. You were being redirected, protected from people, places, and patterns that would have pulled you away from your divine assignment. There's a moment when the chosen one stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What is this trying to awaken in me?" That's when the pain begins to transform into clarity. That's when you realize the emotional distance from your family wasn't just dysfunction, it was preparation to lead yourself, to hear your own voice, to follow the guidance of God directly without needing external validation. Some of the people who hurt you the most in childhood were unknowingly used to strengthen your spirit. They weren't in control of your destiny. God was. Every heartbreak, every moment you were left to deal with things far beyond your years, every time you cried yourself to sleep feeling invisible, it was molding you, creating in you a spiritual resilience that cannot be taught in books or schools. You learned how to survive in silence. You mastered the ability to read people without words. You became highly intuitive because you had to be. When no one explains the truth to you, your spirit starts seeking it on its own. That's why so many chosen ones develop spiritual gifts before they even know what they are. Dreaming things that later come true. Sensing danger before it happens. Feeling other people's pain in your own body. And still, you carried on. You went through things that should have broken you, but instead, they built you. You were being stripped down so you could rise up. Every scar you carry is not shame. It's sacred. It's proof that you passed the test, that you kept going when others gave up, that even without guidance, even without support, you still held on to something greater. Maybe you didn't know what to call it then, but now you do. Purpose. The chosen one doesn't emerge from comfort. They're forged in fire. And the earlier the fire starts, the stronger they become. That's why some people look at you and can't understand how you survived what you did. They don't realize that survival wasn't your goal, it was your classroom. It was how you discovered your strength, your empathy, your faith. You didn't just go through pain, you grew through pain. And the beauty of it is this: The very things that made you feel broken are now the things that make you powerful. Your ability to feel deeply now allows you to help others heal. Your past loneliness gave birth to compassion. Your spiritual sensitivity now leads you toward truth. You're not just a survivor, you're a guide, a light in the darkness for those still trying to find their way. But here's the thing. Many chosen ones stay stuck in survival mode because no one ever told them they were chosen. They keep replaying the trauma without realizing they've already passed the test. They keep looking back, waiting for someone to apologize, waiting for someone to say, "You mattered." But the moment you realize you've always mattered, something breaks open inside you. That's when your true life begins. You weren't created to fit in. You were born to awaken, to speak life into lifeless spaces, to challenge broken systems, to heal bloodlines, to carry generational wisdom in your bones. That's why you couldn't stay asleep like everyone else.